Welcome to Unstoppable, where dreams turn into plans and plans turn into powerful action. Hosted by Paula Swain, financial planner, business owner, grandma, and queen of reinvention. This show is for women ready to stop surviving and start thriving. We'll laugh, we'll learn, and we'll tackle the messy, beautiful, in-between parts of life that no one really talks about, but we all live through. This is Unstoppable.
Hi, and welcome to Unstoppable, where we dream, grow, and thrive. I'm your host, Paula Swain, financial planner and founder of the Financial Center for Women. Today, we're going to be digging into a topic that's easy to put off, but so important to have in place: estate planning, wills, trust, power of attorneys. It's not always the most fun topic. I know my clients avoid it as much as they can, but it's one of the most empowering steps you can do to make sure that you take care of yourself and your family. So today we're being joined by Heidi. She's an estate planning attorney with Howard & Howard. So welcome, Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So you're nice and tan. Looks like you just got back from vacay.
I did. Kids in spring break with the
Wow,
family. It was
nice,
lovely. Yeah.
nice. So I know we got to dive into this topic, and everybody
Yeah.
hates this topic.
I know. Sometimes I feel a little bit like the Grim Reaper, right, when we talk about it. But
You know, it is talking about that.
It is, and incapacity, right? We cover both realms, but
Right.
it is critically important. And I find that once we get through it and we get through the process, people have real peace of mind. So it's worth.
So let's just start with the basics. So I know what the basics is. I could tell you, but I'll let you tell me.
Right. Well, estate planning ultimately is the process of making sure that your assets, right, your worldly assets, and sometimes even other types of assets, sentimental, emotional assets, are passed on to the next generation in the way and by the individuals who you want them to. So we put together the legal tools to make sure that happens. It looks different in all cases.
Yeah, everybody's situation is different.
Every
You know, somebody who's maybe single and doesn't have any children, they may be wanting to leave their assets to a charity, where there's blended families who want to make sure that if something happens that the children from that spouse don't become disinherited. So there's all kinds of different estate plans out there.
There is. And if you don't create one, the state will create one for you.
So let's talk about that for a second.
Right.
So I know that there's rules that happen, who gets to inherit what. And I know spouse comes into play if you're married, but oddly too, if you're not married, it could be your mother if she's still alive. But what if your mother's in a nursing home situation or something like that? You don't want her to be able to inherit those funds.
Right, exactly. If she's dependent on benefits from the state and local government, federal government, that might cause real issues, right? So, and it's open to the public, right? The process of probate is open to the public. So you'd be shocked to hear that people come out of the woodwork when they hear that someone's passed, right? So that's definitely something we try to avoid.
When I first started in this business many years ago, there was one of my clients was I think there was 39 of them in probate over their uncle's estate that was worth like, $30,000, and everybody was going to get 39 people were going to share $30,000.
Right. Well, and don't forget who makes the most out of that? The attorneys.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I'm one of them. So, but even I would say I'd much rather put together a solid estate plan for you than have to clean up a probate mess with grieving family members who now are dueling over things.
I think the biggest reason people don't want to talk about this subject is they don't want to talk about the fact that they're going to die. And there's two dates that we know: your birthday and your death date. That we don't know, but there are two things that we have. It's your birthday and death date. So everybody's going to pass away. But it's not just about passing away. It's about what happens if I get in a car accident. I can't make decisions for myself.
Right.
And if you don't have those documents in place, how's anybody going to help you?
Right. The incapacity part can come on suddenly. It can come over a long term. We all think incapacity is this slow decline of cognitive ability, right, that we see, unfortunately, in many of an aging population. But it can come in the blink of an eye if someone's in some sort of catastrophic accident or has had a client that had aneurysm. And unfortunately, they didn't have power of attorney. So their finances were trapped, right? No one had the legal authority without going to court, which is not an overnight thing. And even worse, no one had the authority to make their healthcare decisions. So it was awful, right? And those are the foundations. So anyone over the age of adult or majority in the state of Michigan, which is 18,
Mm-hmm.
should have those powers of attorney, which includes my soon-to-be senior in high school as he's leaving the nest, right? No longer do I have authority for him. He's technically an adult, even at the age of 18. So you've hung out with 18-year-olds, right? We
Well, it
chuckle
doesn't
about
mean
that, but
it doesn't mean he's mature, but
no. Yeah.
but he is an adult. And I, as a woman, understand that. So if I'm away at college and something happens or I need to go into the hospital for whatever reason, and maybe I don't want my mother
Right?
to know,
Right?
you know, what happened to me. I mean, I should have that right as an adult to keep that private.
You do.
But she also, if something happens to me, I need her to make decisions for me, and then that's important.
Right. Which you bring up a good point, right? We have privacy. So federal law protects our medical privacy. That's HIPAA. So I don't know if you've encountered this, but many a times people have gone to the hospital with the best of intentions to check on a loved one. And all of a sudden they're confronted with HIPAA, which, which is, I'm sorry, we can't tell you anything about your loved one because the doctors are not allowed to, right? Medical professionals are not allowed. So those powers of attorney are also coupled with a HIPAA authorization so that we are explicit in who can and can't know what's going on with you.
You know, I talk to people about that all the time. Like, you need to have these documents in place. And they'll say, oh, no, I didn't. You know, when my sister was in and her, and I'm like, well, how is that possible? Because these are rules that the hospitals and stuff are supposed to abide by.
Sure.
But yet you hear the stories, maybe they're not true. I hear the stories about people who make decisions even when technically they're not supposed to.
I'm not going to say it's never happened, but do you want to make that case?
No.
When you're in a, an intensely emotional situation and something tragic has occurred. So I personally am not willing to make that bet, nor would I advise any of my clients to go upon what shoulda, coulda, maybe did happen in another scenario.
But, you know, they're just so adamant. I'm like, please just go get the right documents.
Yeah.
Please just do me a favor and get it set up correctly.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't need that. And I think, too, also the reason people don't make those decisions, and we'll get into the specifics of what those documents are, is because they don't know who to choose.
Yeah.
Like, I should choose my son, but if I want to choose this person, then this person's going to get upset, or they're not responsible enough, or I don't have anybody, and therefore they do nothing.
Yeah, it's that paralysis, right? And that's why finding an attorney and someone that you trust, an advisor, an attorney actually that can work hand in hand with your financial advisors and your pre-existing circle of advisors, right, is critical. So you're having those conversations, and a caring, good, empathetic attorney is going to flesh that out with you, tell you exactly what their roles and responsibilities are. And if it's not someone that you choose in your family, they're going to help you vet who that person might be.
So let's talk about the basics. So I know basics are a will, financial power attorney, health care, do not resuscitate or patient advocate, whatever that one's called.
Right.
Those are minimums.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Yep. Explain them.
Yes. So a lot of people don't know. So let's start with the most basic, a will. A will is a set of instructions to the probate court. That's what a will is. So if I have to pull out your will and use it, including who is to receive from your estate and who's in charge of your estate, or the personal representative, people know that by the name executor, right? That means that I'm in probate court. Most people want to avoid that, right? It's not possible in all scenarios. The best laid plans and best of intentions sometimes can be foiled by unforeseen circumstances. So we always, always, always want to have a will, right? But a lot of people say, I have my will, I'm going to avoid probate, and that's actually not the case. So it is a bare minimum, though. We would not want anyone to die what we call intestate. That means
State of Michigan is taking over.
State of Michigan decides, so that probate code, that probate judge is going to make the ultimate decision on things. So a basic will, a general durable power of attorney, that's who is in charge when you are incapacitated. And that can be an immediate decision, or it can be what we call springing. So it would come into effect at the time of your incapacity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a healthcare power of attorney, right? Including in that healthcare power of attorney is the most critical things of who's your patient advocate if you can't make those decisions, and guidance to that patient advocate around your end of life wishes. So that's where we really dig in and talk about what you want, right? And make sure that the documents align with your beliefs, and then it gives proper guidance to that person. And then that HIPAA document, right? Who can the medical provider speak to about your status?
Didn't I hear of now there's a
Yes.
funeral something, what's it called?
State of Michigan's got an extra layer, and this is not in all states, but we now have a funeral representative designation, right? So that's an additional layer of, once I pass, these are the individuals who are charged with my final arrangements.
So I have to think that came into play with people fighting over what mom would have wanted.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's seen that. So it is a supplemental document in the state of Michigan. So those are the foundations.
I'd be like, Heidi, would you be my funeral person?
Right. I know.
How do you have that conversation with someone?
But it's important. That's one of the gifts too. When we designate that funeral representative, we also talk a little bit and memorialize what you would want, right? Because the last thing, and I've personally been through the loss of a parent without having any guidance about what my father wanted. It is exceptionally hard to make those decisions at that time, right? If I had had something that memorialized what he wanted, even the most basic guidelines, I think it would have taken a huge burden off of myself and my mother. So we're encouraging them to at least lay a few things out. And then some individuals take it to the next level to do their own planning. So it really is a gift to a grieving family.
I just tell my kids all the time, cremate me.
Yeah.
Throw them in the water.
Right. Well, communication with your family members is key too, right? But we memorialize it because sometimes those conversations you'd be surprised.
People hear differently.
They get fuzzy, right? All of a sudden things change in people's minds when their parents pass. Behaviors change too, unfortunately. So having the tools and having it memorialized is critical.
Okay, so we have basically there were 4 basic documents.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you need a little bit more direction.
Yeah.
And you would use a trust.
Right. So most people come to me and they say, we'd like to avoid probate. I say, that's great. I would like to avoid probate too, right? And we can do that in a variety of ways, right? We can avoid probate using beneficiary designations. So if you have an account, we can say, upon my death, this account is to be paid to these individuals, right? TOD, some POD, common acronyms there. We can use ladybird deeds, right? That's ladybird, what we call them in the state of Michigan. A lot of people have heard about that. It's kind of like putting beneficiary designations on real estate, right?
I have that on my home.
Right. If I die owning this home, then it is conveyed to such and such, right? Now, I would say on a ladybird deed, a lot of people come and they have drafted them themselves because they've used the Google lawyer, right? And they've come up and they've drafted their own ladybird deed. And I would caution any individual on doing that and at least getting eyes of an attorney on it, because improperly crafted deeds actually has ended us in litigation or in probate, right? So it's not as easy as Googling a ladybird deed. The other alternative is a trust. So there are different types of trusts, lots of different types of trusts with all sorts of fancy names, right? But I would say every single individual needs at least, who needs a trust is a revocable living trust. The other thing I would say is that I hear people come in and say, well, I heard online or Google said that everybody needs a trust. That's not always the case.
Right.
And
I don't personally have one.
Right. I would say, honestly, if a lawyer tells you that every single one of his clients need a trust, he's dealing with, the 1%, right? Or he's lying to make, he or her, they're lying to make more attorney's fees. Not everyone needs those.
I would agree with that. I just had a client have that. They're like, and a close client, and they're like, yeah, the attorney says I need a trust. I'm like, everything you have is beneficiary driven. You do have a will. You've got all your powers. Your house is ladybird. I'm not sure what else you would need.
It's not always appropriate in every single case. It has It's a great tool when we need it, right? People with minor children, people with children with special needs and supplemental needs, people with beneficiaries who are receiving benefits, right? People who have children who are challenged in a variety of ways, whether that be an addiction issue, a creditor issue, a spendthrift, meaning that they really aren't able to manage their own financial affairs. Those are all great circumstances where a trust is an incredible tool, right? And so we talk a lot about it and we really dig in. I ask a lot of personal questions, right? Do we like the in-laws? How are things going on the new business, right? A lot of really personal questions, but in order for me or the estate planning attorney, in my opinion, to craft the plan that's special for your family, we have to know those situations. And we have to really understand the dynamics such that we can guide you and say, yes, I would advise you to create a trust. Right? Family dependent.
I think that I like your honesty because there are so many people out there who don't give the right information and for other reasons. And it's important, because if you go in and you say that you have to have a trust, it's more expensive to do the trust than it is to do those other documents. And they may say, I can't afford that. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
When it may not have been in their best interest anyway. Maybe this would have worked
right.
for them.
Right. And so then they don't do anything. Right. So, and maybe a trust isn't in the budget now, but maybe getting your basic wills and powers of attorney, and it's always amendable down the road, right? Let's talk again in a couple of years and see how things are and circle back, because an estate plan is not a one and done sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think it's good to note too that if you had, like, I often run into people that say, oh yeah, I had a will done, 20 years ago. Yeah, your kids are older.
Yeah.
You don't need to be providing guardians for them.
Right.
You need to update that. Or I had my power of attorney written 7 or 8 years ago. Well, a lot's changed in that 7 or 8 years, so maybe you need to have it
Exactly.
revisited.
Right. And those 20-year-old powers of attorney, if I walked into my local branch bank and tried to use, there's a strong likelihood that bank would laugh me right out the door, right? So
they're so particular. I mean,
incredibly.
You could take the document to one person, one bank, and they'll accept it, and you go to a different bank and they won't.
Exactly.
They're so particular
It
about
is.
what they take.
So it's really important to make sure, I always talk about the D's, right? So has there been a death in your family? Has there been a disability or a diagnosis? Has there been a divorce? Or has it been a decade, right? If any of those have transpired, probably time to look back at it and make sure that that estate plan is still right for your family.
What was that? Divorce,
death, diagnosis, disability, divorce, decade. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's easy to remember.
Yeah, the D's. Those are the tough things that it's my job to ask about.
And when all those happen, you should be reaching out to me too.
Yeah. Yes.
Because your life is in transition.
Yes. Unfortunately, that's also a thing that occurs. So if people are creating an estate plan, their work with the attorney is siloed away from their financial advisor. A competent, estate planning attorney is going to make sure that there's a connection between the estate plan and your advisor so that it works together, right? So the trust that we talked about, those trusts are kind of like creating buckets. They're empty until
you fill them up.
Something in them. So one of the most common things I see are great estate plans, and people got the beautiful binder, right? It's that big. They love it. They invested. It's an investment. And then they put it on the shelf and it collects dust and they do nothing to it. And then when we go and they pass, there's nothing that has been funded or placed into that trust. And therefore, it really is as useless as the paper that it's on.
Yeah, I do work really closely, like with you and other attorneys that I work with when we're putting together the estate plan. And we also, I mean, if you're looking for if you're doing some holistic planning, you should be working and having conversations with your accountant, your estate planning attorney, and your financial planner together.
Yeah.
So that we're all on the same page.
Exactly. Far too frequently, it's really siloed. And it causes problems, not just for you, but your family ultimately down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I know that it's really hard for people to talk about this conversation, but it is important to get those documents done. It's also important to have maybe an annual family meeting about what those documents say. You don't have to tell your kids what your assets are,
Right.
but at least where they're at, who are the people that you're working with,
Right.
and meet them.
Right.
So when something does happen, you have some sort of a relationship with them.
Exactly.
And it's not just a stranger.
Yeah.
And they know you, and when something happens, you can call. Because I know in my business with, if mom is in her late 80s and I start to see something going on with her, I want to have a relationship with that child that I can say, hey, is mom okay?
Yeah.
Should we be having some different types of conversations? What's going on?
Yeah.
And sometimes things happen and immediate family doesn't notice.
Sure.
Or I may.
Yeah.
Right, it was.
It is so helpful. And again, I go back to, you can share as much as you want about your estate plan with your children. I think different families make different decisions about that. But sharing the fact that you have created the estate plan, who are the individuals that were involved in crafting that with you, where the documents are kept, is critical. And any conversation I can have about with successor, trustees or executors, knowing that in the future, they're going to need help in implementing mom and dad's estate plan. I would love to talk to you up front, right? So that we don't get these deer in headlights sort of moments after mom and dad are passing. Who is it? Where's it? Where's the estate plan? What do I need to do? Right? I mean, there's going to be enough going on that if we prepare a little bit up front and have that relationship with the family, it goes a long way.
I also think having that conversation with the family too, about maybe what that inheritance might look like, so there's no surprise, and who your representatives are, so that's not a surprise.
Yeah.
Why did mom pick her? And,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many dynamics that happened at that time when a parent's ill or passing away, that if you can just try to have those open conversations beforehand so nobody's surprised when the time comes and you're like, well, your mom's favorite, that's why she picked you. And you know what I mean? So it takes away a lot of that emotion that doesn't need to be there.
I would agree with that. There is a lot of conflict that can occur, which is why we try to go an extra length in talking about, where might the points of contention be when you pass. I've had sister and sister fighting over salt and pepper shakers, right? So we talk about, are there items of sentimental or monetary value that you can designate to go to an individual, or better yet, have you thought about gifting to that person while you're alive so you can see them enjoy that gift before you pass, and we know that it's going to the right person, right?
I agree with that 100%. I tell my clients all the time, if you think they're going to enjoy it when you're gone, it's sitting on your shelf.
Right?
Why don't you give it to them now and let them enjoy it? You can actually see them enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why you hoard all this stuff? Not hoard's probably not a good word, but you have all this stuff that you know somebody else might enjoy.
Yeah.
And just give it to them.
Yeah. The other thing we talk a lot about is making it personal. So estate planning documents, oftentimes they look very boilerplate, and they can be a lot of legalese, right? So
I read mine. I'm like, boring.
Right. They put a lot of people to sleep. I'm not going to lie, right? Very
Yes.
voluminous, tough to read, not fun. So what can we do to make sure that this is personalized? Can we add specific language? Can we make a statement, right, to the individuals that are involved, maybe about why you did the things you did?
Oh, that's nice.
Can we record it even so that you can see it face to face? And those handwritten notes, those specialized descriptions and reasons that are in those documents, those are important, and they go a long way. Even small token gifts to a grandchild, to a neighbor, we can include special language in that. So I would really make that a part, understanding that it goes a long way to diffuse any conflict in the future, and it really will make a lasting impact.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Actually, I've never heard of an attorney doing that before.
Oh, well.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Makes it so much more personal and more memorable to have that. I mean, how nice would that be to have a video after mom's just passed that you can see why she gave you what she gave you? That's really cool.
Right.
One thing I want to talk about is the importance of having an estate plan when you have a disabled child. And usually they do know that disabled children may or may not inherit based on if they're on um, SSI. Is that right? SSI. So, but some people may not know
Yeah.
the rules and how that works. Did you want to talk about that briefly?
Right. So where we have that instance in a family, we want to make sure we establish a trust that maybe you're providing for multiple children, but if you, regardless, that the provisions for that particular child, I hear special needs, I call it supplemental needs, right?
Okay.
Because I think that really aligns with what you're doing, which is you're supplementing the benefits that they may be receiving in the future, right? And so if those benefits down the road are what we call means tested, or is the governing body that's distributing these benefits looking at the income of that individual. And if they are, we're creating these trusts such that your child benefits from what you're leaving them, but technically and legally they're not the owner. So it would not be treated or counted against
As their
them.
income.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because at some point, if it's not done properly, then you could affect their benefits.
You can jeopardize their benefit. And we also want to make sure that there are nominations of individuals that for the fiduciary roles for that child, meaning who's going to be in charge of guardianship of that child, who's going to be the conservator or in charge of the finances for that individual. So again, if you don't choose, we don't want the state to choose for you. So we're going to make sure we're nominating the individuals within your documents, and the court will give great deference to the individuals that you're nominated there. So being proactive about that.
So your special needs or your trust could spend, I'm just going to, and maybe I'm incorrect, but you have like a trust. So let's say you have 3 children and your child with supplemental needs, at that death that they would maybe spun off to a trust for them, and then the other kids could inherit as um, normal.
Right.
I don't know what the term would be. And then when that child passed away, then that money could go to your other children.
Exactly.
But you've protected their benefits.
Exactly right. You got it. Yeah. So again, this goes back to lots of personal questions at the consultation, digging in, talking to me about your family, your dynamics, health challenges, fears, all of it.
So now you wonder why nobody wants to come.
I know. I get it.
You got those prying eyes.
Once we get you there, right? We do our best to make it as comfortable as possible. Understand it's a hard subject.
But it's the same conversation I'm having. It isn't that different. I mean, I have to ask the tough questions also.
Yeah.
And I know some people, get taken back by it, but if I don't really understand who you are or what your goals are or what's going on inside of your family unit, how can I plan for you? How can you plan? You've got to ask those hard questions.
Right. And I enjoy it at the end. I think that ultimately bonds us, and as much as possible, and we building a relationship of trust so that I can craft a good plan. And at the end of it, like I said, hopefully you have peace of mind that should something occur, your ducks are in a row, right? And you've given a gift and avoided potential chaos and conflict down the road.
A lot of great information.
No, good.
So how can somebody get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, I'm on the website. My firm is called Howard & Howard, so that's easy to Google my name, Heidi, and last name McAra. You can find me on the website, and I'm sure you can find me on social media as well.
Great. Thank you so much. So, I really like how you break it down, place, and it's not always accurate. I have people fight with me like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, I get it. I talk to estate planning all the time, but it really is a difficult topic, and it is one of the best gifts that you can give to your loved ones, even to yourself in case something happens to you. So this episode of Unstoppable has been brought to you by me, Paula Swain, financial planner and founder of the Financial Center for Women. If you're ready to get your financial life in order, let's talk. So join us next week when we will be joined by Mark Edelstein with Ross Mortgage to discuss the mortgage process and how it relates not only to your first mortgage, but if you might be going through or considering a divorce. Until next time, remember, dream, grow, and thrive.
Thanks for watching Unstoppable. Do you have a question for Paula? Send it our way. To schedule a one-on-one consultation, give us a call. Unstoppable is brought to you by Paula Swain and the Financial Center for Women. Dream, grow, thrive.